are you? How the heck are you?
I'm going to do a podcast.
So let's get a little deeper into your story, shall we? Who are you?
How
that becomes a sticky wicket. What's your juice? Let's get back on track. You've got a lot of things going on. What is it that you're curious about? What you're doing? Right? Well,
let's crumble up some falafel for you.
Boom, 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 boom. It's been a whirlwind for you. What is it that supercharges you about this? Lots going on, lots coming up? Or is that too many stuff? Did I ask too many questions?
No, not too many questions.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Drop the Mic, the Chamber podcast. I'm Moe Belliveau, Executive Director of the Chamber. Our podcast is the place where I get to chat with local business owners, chamber members, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, overall people of interest. And we get to know who they are, what they do, and why they do it. Before we get started, I have a few things that I would like to say to Easthampton Media, which is a big fat thank you. Thank you for your partnership on this project. In particular, I thank Jeff Mastriani, Executive Director over here at eMedia, Jackson Foote, who is our production coordinator, and Tim Riley, Operations Manager. I thank you all. You make us look fabulous and sound terrific every single time. So today's guest for episode 5, we have with us Kate Reagan. She is a graduate of Smith College. Kate has been lending in the Valley since 1996 with over 25 years of experience in that role. She has also had experiences with a national mortgage company, a mortgage broker, as well as a local bank. Kate is currently branch manager at Guild Mortgage here in Easthampton, and Kate is also currently on the board of directors, and she has most recently served as a past president,
Yes.
which was wonderful and lovely.
Yes, we had a great time working together.
Indeed we did.
Yes.
And so welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
Here we
Thank
are.
you.
Let's dive right in, shall we?
Absolutely.
How the heck are you?
I am good.
Good.
I am good.
It's a good day.
It's a beautiful day. It's a little cold, but, little people at my house are excited about the prospect of snow in the overnight hours.
This evening,
Yes.
snow.
Yes.
You're a sunshine gal, aren't you?
I am a sunshine
That
gal.
is the gist I get from you.
I'm kind of also a Four Seasons gal. I really like all four seasons.
Do you?
I wouldn't say equally, but I like them all.
I was going to say, because winter, for some reason,
Yeah.
has not registered on that scale when I think of you.
Yeah. Well, I guess, one of the things about having young children is they push your comfort zone. So, for example, my kids have gotten me out snow tubing
Okay,
last
that I don't.
couple of years.
That I don't see either.
Yeah. Horseback riding in the winter. Interesting. And then, of course, there's all sorts of
Lovely.
other fun things that you can do in the winter. Ice skating, roller skating,
Yes.
swimming indoors, of course. Water parks that are indoors.
Funny thing you should mention roller skating. I used to love to roller skate when I was a kid. And just recently, searching around on YouTube, my husband and I found this. I think it's in Atlanta, Georgia. And there's this really funky, cool roller rink. And these people are doing the most amazing things on roller skates.
It's amazing.
I'm
what
like, they're
some people
heavy.
can do.
They're heavy. It's not like
Yeah.
ice skates
Yeah.
that you don't know are there.
Yeah.
Until you twist your ankle.
Yeah.
But-
yeah, I mean, you could absolutely get your feet
Yeah.
all tangled up in them.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but anyways, I used to love to do that, so that's very funny.
As did I. So, do you remember the metal ones that would clip onto your sneakers in the 70s?
No.
Those were real ankle breakers, but we loved them as kids
Aha.
because that was something you had access to every day.
Yes.
Roller skating in the streets, down the sidewalk.
Yes.
Across the driveway,
Until you
whatever
hit a pine
it was.
cone.
Pretty much, yes. And the next thing you know, you had demolished knees. And
Demolished knees for sure.
Yep.
So let's get started right off the bat. Can you give us a little bit of background? Who are you?
Yeah, I love that you start with the big existential question.
I
of,
know.
Who am I? Who am I? When I think of myself as a mortgage lender, I am somebody who loves to solve problems. So, I had a client recently say to me that there was a little bit of something almost, sort of risky in the way that I like to work, which is that when another lending institution says, no, that's not possible, nope, can't be done, my response is generally, watch me.
Lay down the smack.
Yeah, you don't think of mortgage lending, you think of that as sort of dry, and you think of it as something where it's very regimented, and in some ways that it is. But when you are somebody who likes to understand all of the rules and how you can work them together, you can solve problems that other people can't. And one of the things that I love about my team at Guild is I work with a whole bunch of people, both in our Easthampton office and also within our company, which is actually a national company at this point. It's in 49 states. That I work with a team of people who are like, yeah, let's do the deals that other people won't necessarily do. And that could be, funky things about the property, for example. So I have a loan right now for somebody who is buying a condominium where there is more commercial influence than what is typically allowed. So my first...
What does that mean? More commercial influence?
More commercial influence, meaning that there's storefronts on the first floor.
Oh, okay.
And condominiums above.
Oh, neat.
Residential
Right.
condominiums
Okay.
above, to be clear. And so there are particular rules about how much of the square footage can be commercially used and how much of it has to be residential in order for it to be approvable. So, of course, when I realized that this is not within the guidelines, my first question is, well, can we get an exception on that? And we were able to successfully get an exception on that.
okay.
So we actually go to Fannie Mae or go to Freddie Mac and ask them for permission because this condominium has all sorts of good attributes. And we just document the heck out of it and say, this is why we want an exception. Will you please grant it? And they did.
So and you know what? It's interesting because as a potential buyer here or there, I would never stop to think that would be a question that you could ask.
Sure.
Right? And what's the worst anybody's going to say?
Right.
No.
So exactly. And they're going to say no. And
I've heard that.
This applicant, when she came to me, she had been pre-approved by another lender. And she said, well, here's the property I want to buy. And they said, oh, yeah, no. And I looked at it and said, well, yeah, that could be a challenge. But here are possible choices. Our choices are, let's document the heck out of it and ask for an exception. And if we can't do that, then there are broker channels that we can use where that is an acceptable type of property in these broker channels.
So it also sounds like not only are you ready for a challenge, but you're also ready to do the work that might surround that challenge.
That's correct. And not everyone is.
No.
Not everyone is.
Because it's work.
Right, because it is work, and also because it takes understanding how to evaluate the situation and say, is this possible? Is this wise? Does this fit into sort of the bigger picture of lending? Or, and is it like in this situation, it was one little thing that didn't meet the guidelines. When you have one little thing that doesn't meet the guidelines, that's certainly a case where an exception may be granted. When you have a whole lot of things that don't meet the guidelines, that's entirely different.
Right.
Or if the risk is too great on a property. So, for example, had this been a property like if you think about Florida and you think about like timeshare type properties, that never would have happened. I wouldn't even attempt that. But something like this, where it's just a minor change in the allowable square footage, that's absolutely worth going to bat over. And so I'm willing to go to bat in situations where other people say, oh, no, that's not for us.
So besides that willingness to go to bat
Sure.
for your clients,
yeah.
What other area would you consider yourself to be an expert?
I deeply understand the mortgage guidelines.
Oh, I like the way you say that.
If somebody has a situation because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take somebody's real life and put it inside this very ordinary box of guidelines. And so real life doesn't always fit neatly inside the boxes. And so sometimes what we have to do is sort of separate out the information in order to figure out how might we qualify someone and get them inside these convenient, neat little boxes, even if life doesn't go that way. So, for example, I have a customer right now who is on the verge of retiring. He's a gentleman in his 70s, and he's been working for a long time. But because we know he's about to retire and his income will not be ongoing, we wouldn't qualify him with that income. However, because he is of retirement age, and he has retirement assets that we have saved, we can use a formula to look at those assets and say, well, when his work ends, his retirement kicks in, and his retirement is his own savings. So we can use his assets as income and qualify him for his loan that way. So that's the type of thing where when you have a deep understanding of the guidelines, you can take somebody's real life transition and figure out how do we still get them a mortgage, even if at first pass somebody would say, oh, you're about to retire. Sorry, no, can't do that.
So having such a deep understanding seems to me like it opens up a wider palette for creativity.
Exactly. Because you need to know the rules in order to learn how to work within the rules.
Yeah, yeah.
Or figure out how to separate the information in a way where you can find the path that complies with the rules, even if it's not necessarily the original presentation.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, you wouldn't think mortgage lending and creativity go together.
No.
But they really do.
No,
They really do.
I find it really interesting when I listen to you talk is your delight and passion around how you are able to connect those things, mortgage, lending and creativity, and I just think it's interesting.
There's a level,
I find it
it's
inspiring.
Service too. If you think about it, it's a service to my clients is to serve them well, to figure out what is it that they need and how do I help them achieve what it is that they need.
Right.
And so for some people, that's this creativity piece. For some people, it's how do I help them access down payment assistance, for example, or how do I help them access resources that are out in the community that they might not know about. Or for some people who are really starting at a place where they need help with credit improvement, for example. How do I help connect them to resources where they can get some education on how do they improve their credit, or how can I educate them in a way where they can take some steps that will get them in a position where they can buy, if not now, then in 3 months or 6 months or in 12 months or whatever their time frame might be.
Right, helping them to add some tools to their toolbox.
Yeah.
Nice. What's the best part of what you do? What's your favorite piece of your role?
I guess there's a couple pieces. I've already said that one of it is the watch me piece, where somebody says no and I get to say, oh yes, there's a path. Let me show you what this path is going to look like. But there is something particularly delightful.
I have a funny feeling that kind of expands into other areas of your life as well.
Yeah, but there's something particularly delightful about helping people buy a home who think for some reason that they can't. Whether it's, they haven't had a chance to save, so they don't have a substantial down payment. Sometimes I have people come to me and say things like, well, I'm not sure if I can get a loan because and then they sort of fill in the blank with, I'm a single woman, for example, or, I'm 85 years old, how could I possibly get a mortgage? And so there's, equal credit opportunity. So there are rules around that where lenders have a duty to lend to everybody who is eligible, as long as they're 18 or older. So we can't discriminate on the basis of age, and that's a common misperception.
Right.
We don't discriminate on the basis of marital status or gender or any other particular attribute. And so I think for me, helping people be empowered to say, to come in, they come to me and they say, I don't know if I can, and for me to coach them and guide them and help them understand, oh yes, you can, and let's get you there.
Right.
And so one of my great joys is seeing people at the finish line, standing on the doorstep with the key in their hand, usually holding their realtor sold sign of some sort, to know that we help them change their lives, and so it's not just the housing, it's also, this is how people build wealth over the course of their lifetime. This is how people stabilize families. This is how people change neighborhoods and communities, and so I've been part of the story for a lot of people, helping them change their lives and the lives of their children, the lives of their communities, and that really speaks to me.
What's the worst part of your job that you'd rather avoid?
I don't know if there's a part of it that I would like to avoid, but, there are, moments where things don't go as planned, so the thing about real estate is that there are all sorts of areas that are not in my control. Right. So there are, we can do a great job on the lending side, and there's something wonky about the property that just can't get resolved. Whether that's a title issue, that's a legal issue, or whether that's a physical issue on the property. There are occasionally where people don't take the coaching and the guidance that we give. Somebody who decides to run out and buy a bunch of furniture right before closing to furnish their new home, so they take on new debt that they can't then withstand the payments on and then don't qualify.
Really?
That doesn't happen often because
Oh my God, I've never heard of such a thing.
we tell them from day one, don't open any new debt, any new accounts, but occasionally people will disregard our advice. Or somebody will give notice on their job before they're closing.
Oops.
Yeah. Whoops. And when we tell them, again, repeatedly in writing, verbally, et cetera, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, and people do it anyway. And so I always am, I'm always upset by the moments where there are things that I cannot fix, right? Because if you're somebody who likes to be a fixer and likes to solve puzzles and make things work, when you can't solve it, and you can't make it work, that's upsetting to me. I don't like those moments. They don't happen often, but when they do, they hurt. Yeah. They really do.
I get it.
Yep.
What's the best business advice you've ever gotten?
That's a great question. It's a really great question, and my answer is such a simple one. I don't know if you remember the Nike campaign of Just Do It. Well, I have a district manager who is he's a sports guy, and that's just who he is. And a couple years back, he said to me, not exactly those words, just do it, but what he said is, we talk about writing loans. He was like, Kate, just write them. Just write them. You know what you're doing. Just write the loans.
Yeah.
We'll take care of the rest, because I have this wonderful operations team, both in my office in Easthampton and externally in other parts of the state, that support my work. So just write them, and everything else will be fine. And as much as that's a simple piece of advice, it's the just do it. Be bold, right?
Yeah.
Make the call.
Yeah.
Go chase the deal.
Yeah.
Go chase the referral partner. Make the relationship, and we will take care of everything else. It was almost just blanket permission to go do what I need to do,
Right.
In order to go out and serve my community. And profound and really brief.
Yeah.
Just do it.
And do you have to remind yourself that frequent?
Some days.
Yeah.
Some days. There are days where the hardest thing about the day is to keep your spirits elevated.
Yeah.
And your can-do spirit alive.
Yes.
And I think that's for everyone.
Yes.
And so there are days where I have to think back and say, okay, you can do this.
Right.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
I can totally relate to that, because I tend to be optimistic pretty much most of the time. But there are the days where you're like, oh, God.
Yeah, where the challenge, whatever it is, seems insurmountable, and you have to just do what it takes.
Yeah.
To get yourself back in the mindset of just do it.
Right.
And for me, that may be an early morning workout. That may be some great music to start the day. That may be plugging in my headset and just, rocking out for a little while I'm doing other tasks to get myself on the right vibe to continue to do what I do.
What's the worst advice you've ever gotten?
The good news is I figured out how to block out the bad advice.
So interesting, because I ask a lot of people that question.
Yeah.
And most folks are kind of stumped. They're like,
no. There are plenty of people who want to comment.
yeah.
And
Yes.
I believe very strongly in only taking criticism from somebody that you would take advice from. And so if the person is someone who's close to me and they have something that they need to share with me, I want to hear that. But if there are people who are not close to me, who don't understand me or don't understand my business, and they want to make sort of blanket generalizations, I just walk away with that one. So I think about, in my industry, there's a lot of recruiting. Right? So there are people who work for other lending institutions who want to employ me. And so they'll come to me looking to employ me. It's not the way with other jobs where you apply to them. This is more the opposite, where they come to you. And I had a gentleman say, what's your market? And I was like, well, Western Massachusetts. And then I have to describe where that is. And, his first one, he was like, oh, well, that's just kind of like low cost, low loan amount areas. I'm like, oh, wow, I haven't heard anybody say that since the mid-'90s.
especially about this area.
Yeah, he sort of just wrote it off instantaneously. I'm like, wow, all other efforts for your organization attempting to hire me are now done Because if you are the person I would report to and that's how you perceive my area,
Right.
and you don't know actually anything
Right.
about it,
Right.
I don't have time for that.
Right.
You know, because we live in this beautiful, vibrant, interesting, educated, eclectic community that has a lot of great things going for it. And so somebody who's going to have, make a blanket generalization is not someone I want
Right.
to associate with. So that's just
Right.
an example of the types of things that I hear.
Right.
And just kind of let them go.
Are you good at, sometimes, do you feel that you're good at sometimes, I hate to sound, it sounds a little harsh, but sometimes you have to fire the customer, but not fire the customer necessarily, but like giving yourself permission to say, no, thank you.
I have a tendency to give myself permission to say no, thank you, but usually in a very quiet kind of way.
Yeah.
Where,
And I
like,
don't
I'll
necessarily
hear-
mean clients
No,
per
no,
se, but I
no,
mean
no.
like what you're just
like
talking
this type of person who's making a blanket generalization where I'm going to be very polite to him, but he's never going to get my attention again. You know what I mean? Like he had a moment where he maybe could have captured my attention.
And it's gone.
And he squandered it. He squandered it.
Yeah.
By judging my community. So those are the types of folks where I will very politely disengage myself.
Nice.
That's it. Just a
I
polite
like that.
disengagement.
I like that
Because
term.
I need to protect.
Disengaged.
Yes. Well, I need
It's
to
a disengage button.
It's like I need to protect my happiness, right? My can-do spirit, my desire and drive, my grit, my tenacity. I need to protect those things. And so people who subtract from that have no place in my world.
So do you feel you're good at setting boundaries? I guess.
Try.
Right.
It's an ongoing
Yeah.
thing, right?
Right.
I mean, you're setting boundaries on a regular basis.
Right.
About who you let in and who you keep at a distance.
Right, right. So, what is one of your biggest, as the branch manager at Guild, what is one of your biggest business challenges?
That's a really great question about what are the business challenges, because the business challenges in real estate change every day. And so we have teams, right? So we have teams of people who work behind the scenes, the operations folks. There's teams that you work with on every transaction, and that's your borrower, your real estate agents, your attorneys, your insurance agents, your home inspectors. I mean, there's a variety of folks who work together. So you have these teams that you're working with. And I think the hardest part sometimes is to get everybody a very timely answer to what they need when you have a lot of different teams that you're part of. So I'm part of my branch team. I'm part of this bigger organization. I'm part of the team on each of these transactions. And then I have my referral partners that I want to make sure that if they need me, that they're getting what they need from me. And so sometimes it's challenging to be what I need to be for each group or each team all at the same time, because one of the fun things about real estate is it always happens all at once.
Right.
So, for example, you can say, it's been a very quiet morning. And then all of a sudden, the afternoon will just explode with people's, desire to make contact or need to follow up on things. And so you can go from sort of slow to wild.
Right.
Just the flip of the clock.
Right, right.
So, that's always a challenge, is to try and, manage all those different demands.
Right.
Yeah.
If there was something, all right, I'm going to hold that thought, Mo. I'm going to get back. How are the challenges that you're experiencing now different from when during COVID, like during lockdown and stuff?
Yeah. So, many people worked from home during lockdown. We chose to work in our branch because there was just a few of us, and so we were our own little pod. And so during COVID, we were exceptionally busy because, as you probably recall, the housing market really took off.
Right.
Because people were leaving cities, leaving apartments, leaving sort of communal spaces, and wanting to spread out and buy. And Western Mass was a huge destination for folks who wanted to spread out and buy.
Right.
So we were wildly busy. In our own little pod in the office. And so things have kind of shifted from there, where the market has shifted a bit. As you probably know, interest rates are up.
Right. And how is that? So has that affected things drastically? Are you like, now people are like, ugh?
Well, so I think there are many people.
Or is that going to be like a trickle?
Well, it's hard to say
lag.
what it's going to do, but I think
Time
what
lag.
people are seeing is there are people that are interested in buying who are maybe disappointed that they haven't been able to buy yet, that they were outbid and outnumbered on every house that they tried, that every house that they bid on, there were 16 offers and they
Right.
just weren't the winning one, and so what we're seeing is a little bit of a slowdown. So instead of 16 offers, maybe there's 6 offers on a house. So your likelihood of getting a house is maybe higher. The likelihood that you're going to have to way overpay to get it seems to be lower. So people are paying a little bit less.
But it's gonna
closer
cost
to
you a little
market.
more.
It may cost you a little bit more in the interest rate, but by reducing the price, because you're not overpaying so much,
Right.
what you're actually coming up with is a monthly expense that's about the same. And so getting that message out to people who want to be home
Interesting.
buyers,
See, I didn't realize that.
but haven't purchased anything and are maybe disappointed or discouraged in this market, there really are still ways for them to buy and be comfortable with the payments. And so what I find is I'm helping people understand those pieces more now than I was during COVID, for example. People are concerned about interest rates because, of course, we have this sort of whiplash feel where rates went from 3s to 7s, what feels like overnight. It was over maybe a 6-month period, but they've been just rising. And what people are having a hard time understanding is that 7 is normal and 3 is the abnormal.
Yep.
The 3, those are rates we had never seen before. But because we saw them consistently for about 2 years, that was the new normal. And so going back to what is really normal has
Right.
been that
Freaks everybody out.
Yeah, it's this whiplash experience where people are like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What happens to the payment? And so, it's hard for people to sort of keep that 7%-ish interest rate land in mind, that is typical. The other thing is, in my opinion, what's more important is that you buy a house when the time is right for you in your life.
Right.
And that's, job stability, income stability, familial stability, whatever it might be, where it's the right time for you. And people don't time a purchase based on interest rates. The rates are what they are at
Yeah.
the time that you buy. And if you buy when you feel like rates are higher than they could be or should be, you just have to remind yourself you're a candidate for refinancing. I know from my own experience.
There's a tool to remedy that.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
know from my own experience, when I bought my first house in 2000, I shopped hard to get 8% interest. Hard. And then, a couple of years later, when rates came down, I refinanced at 7, and then I refinanced
Yeah.
again at 5.75.
Yeah.
And then I told myself, no more.
Right.
Because I knew I intended to sell. And
Right.
the point of refinancing is that you're going to save money on a monthly basis. So you have to have longevity in the property in
Yeah.
order for refinancing to make sense.
Yeah.
And I knew that I didn't have longevity in the property. And so refinancing would not make further sense for me. At
yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
But, that's the type of decision that when somebody can look at it sort of with the sort of detached eye and say, I can make these payments, I'm comfortable with these payments, regardless of what the rate is. And say, those payments, I'm comfortable, I can do
Yep.
this.
Yep.
And then, if it gets better over time, fantastic.
Right. I can remember on our first home, we played that game a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
when the
couple of
folks-
times, and then we were.
Yeah, and then
And
you
then we
decided
came to
you were
East-
done.
yeah.
And then you moved.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so the folks who bought with interest rates of 3% are going to not want to give those up. So those folks are probably going to stay in those homes as long as they can, as long
Yeah.
as it fits their family and fits their life.
Right.
But for the folks who are buying with these, higher rates, they just need to understand that they're likely a candidate for refinancing at some point down the line.
Right.
So one of the things I love about Guild is Guild has come out very proactively about that and said, that people who buy between, October of 2022 and I believe it's July of 2023, we're going to email a certificate after closing that says, if you come back to us in the next 3 years for a refinance, we're going to waive the lender fees for you. And so the lender fees, ballpark is probably
That's
somewhere
awesome.
in the like $1,200 to $1,500 range.
Right.
So you're going to have some savings there if
Yep.
you come back and refinance in the next
Sure.
couple of years, which kind of, I think, mitigates the fear that people have about, buying now and then, but if, it's going to cost them money to refinance
Oh, I think
down
that's
the
so
line.
smart.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we like about Guild is very forward thinking. Guild also services 95% of the loans that we make. And so we keep people in our portfolio. And so we're able to, keep sort of in good touch, between our customer service folks as well as the branch staff that helped originate the loan in the first place.
Is that different for you at this moment in time?
It is, because
That's not. Do you like that better? I would
do.
think.
Most
Suits
times
your
when you work
personality.
for like a non-depository lender or a mortgage company instead of a bank, typically the servicing will get transferred
Yep.
to a servicing company.
Yep.
Whereas we are both the originator and the servicing company, and so it feels like a customer for life strategy,
Right.
which I really like because that's how I operate.
Right.
And so that aligns really well with who I am and the
that's
work
nice.
that I do.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to jump back and forth, but I want to
Please.
get back to a little bit more on the personal of
Yeah.
you.
The who am I?
Yeah, the who are you? I want
Big
to.
existential question.
Yeah, I want to know a little bit more about what you've been up to up until Guild.
Sure.
Give
me the history.
A little bit of history. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry that we're kind of bouncing
No,
around.
that's fine. So, I mean, who am I? I am the child of 2 educators.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes kind of sense
It
to me
does
now.
make sense. And so, I find that sometimes that comes out when I talk to customers where
Yep.
I want to explain things
Yep.
because my mother was a teacher,
Yep.
and that's how I know how to communicate information. And interestingly enough, my father's in finance, so he was a school business manager.
Oh,
So interestingly enough, my parents' 2 careers in
Right.
some ways are both sort of represented in me.
Yeah.
I'm also a middle child. And so what's interesting about being a middle child is that you can lead and you can follow.
Ah.
And you can be kind of equally comfortable with either one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of find that I am able to do either one comfortably, effortlessly. So depending on who I'm working with,
Right.
I can lead, I can follow,
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
Your choice.
Right.
Nice. And so
Nice.
I think that has worked out well, when it comes to my, my professional life.
Right.
Who am I?
Yeah.
You mentioned that I'm a Smith College graduate.
Yes.
I'm very proud of that, and it's funny. The Smith ladies, we mention each other and we call that out very quickly. So, if somebody finds that in my bio and they say, "Oh, hey, I'm Smith class of,"
Right.
whatever it might be.
Yep.
And so that Smith sisterhood is, very much alive and well.
Yes.
I'm also a graduate of the Williston Northampton School in Easthampton.
There you go.
Yes. Somehow where you went to high school doesn't come out quite as often in
No.
your professional life. But
No, but I did know that, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry that I missed that.
No,
but
no,
yes.
no. But so I'm also a graduate of Williston. So I would say I am locally educated.
Yep.
I've lived in the Valley since I was 13 years
Mm-hmm.
old. Brief foray where I went off to college and made a smashing mistake on my first college choice. I went in, the first week of September, and by Columbus Day weekend, I was like, oh, I've made a terrible mistake.
Oh.
But some kids drop out in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't drop out. What I decided to do instead was to get the best grades I possibly could so that I could transfer to the school of my choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got, rocking good grades.
Good.
And transferred to Smith as
Nice.
a sophomore. So I came into Smith as a sophomore.
Nice.
And decided that, of course, the majors that they had were all great, but none of them quite fit me quite right.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to create my own major, which
Nice.
very few people did.
So which is what?
Social policy.
Shut up. I didn't know that.
I created my own major.
Interesting.
So it was a combination of education, economics, sociology, and government courses. And I had a minor in urban studies.
Stop it right now. I did not
Yes.
know that about you.
Yes. Well,
Very
these
cool.
were the things that interested me.
Uh-huh.
But so it was an interesting process where I had to get, an advisor to sign on from each of these disciplines. And, I had to do all of these sort of administrative tasks in order to create my own major. I had to go before a board and present all this information.
Which was a good exercise.
Who knew this was training for my later life?
Right.
To ask for exceptions and have them
Right.
granted.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So I lived on campus for 2 years. I moved off campus, which Smith generally doesn't allow, but my life circumstances allowed them to make an exception for
Nice.
me to live off campus. And then, it was one of those things where after I graduated, like many people, I didn't know what I was going to do with myself.
Right.
And in 1995, when I graduated from Smith, there were no jobs to be had.
Right.
The economy was such where it was very challenging, and so I took just an entry-level position that I was able to get. And, I had somebody who I knew who reached out to me and said, you would be a great assistant. I work in mortgage banking. I need an assistant. You need a job.
Right.
Let's talk.
Nice.
And we did. And so it was a conversation that, included the will you please, promise me you'll stay for at least a year if we decide to do this, because there's a lot to learn. I stayed for 14.
Oh, wow. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So I really, learned the business, working in this, one group of people who, I have great love for.
Nice.
And then, the market changed. You probably recall the 2008 to 2010
Yes.
housing downturn. So at that point, I went to work for our local bank because that seemed like a sort of a safe move given what was happening in the larger economy. And what I learned about working in a local bank is that local bank lending is very different than the type of lending I sort of was raised in the industry on and was not my cup of tea. My cup of tea is, as you know, sort of the let's go out and build, bold ideas.
More of an Earl Grey as opposed to a chamomile.
Yes, exactly. Let's build some bold ideas. Let's take some risks. Let's figure out how to work within the guidelines, and let's serve people well.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I found is I needed product, I needed programs, I needed all of these tools. And so, I went and, sought out a new employment. And at that point, when I was seeking new employment, I was really looking for fit. I was looking for culture.
I hear that, yeah. Yep.
And I am so grateful to the friends in my life. One is a real estate professional who introduced me to a lender who worked for an organization who said she was so happy with her work. I'm like, well, nobody says that.
Right.
She's like, no, I'm consistently so very happy. And so I must have met with her 4 or 5 times, 2 and 3 hour meetings. And I asked her every question under the sun, every scenario, every this, every that. I was invited to go to trainings before I became an employee and really get a sense of the company culture.
Oh, I like that.
And I knew
Yeah.
that
You
I
were
had
confident.
found my people.
Yep.
And I
That's
found my
nice that you
people.
had that opportunity.
Yeah, it's uncommon.
That's kind of, I was going to say that's rare.
It's uncommon.
Yeah.
So that was RMS Residential Mortgage Services.
Oh, right.
Based out of South Portland, Maine. And
Yep.
then RMS last year got purchased by Gilt.
Yep.
And of course, anytime you have a corporate merger, acquisition, you're going to be anxious, nail biting.
Yeah.
What's this going to look like? And of course, like any merger, there's software transitions and all of these things, which were challenging, of course, especially since they were trying to onboard 900 people all at once. But we're very much on the other side of that. I mean,
It feels like that.
It's been 13 months at this point since
Yeah.
that transition. And it's worked out really well.
Yeah, and you have this really lovely sense of calm about you.
I do. I feel
Yeah,
good.
it's different.
I'm happy where I am.
It's different than it was prior,
Yeah.
I feel, just FYI.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. That feels like a compliment.
it is a compliment. What is it that, what would you like the world to know about you that you think perhaps they don't know? About your work or about
Yeah.
Kate?
Yeah, I think it's the drive. It's the can-do spirit. I have people who I'm working with now who keep saying, you're unlike any lender I've spoken to.
Yeah.
Because there really is a service piece of this. At one point in my life, I thought I wanted to be a social worker, and that's why I studied social policy, and that's
could
why I
see
studied
that.
urban studies. I thought I wanted to be a social worker. As a young person, though, I failed to connect the dots of what a social worker's salary looks like and what real life expenses look like. And I realized very quickly I couldn't live on a social worker's salary and pay my student loans and, have a car and an apartment. I could basically pick 2. And I knew I couldn't get along with picking 2. And so I guess what I want people to know is that I'm a fierce advocate for my clients, and I am delighted to work with people who need a little extra help or a little bit extra support or just aren't quite sure how to put it together, because I can help them figure that out. Whether that's something as simple as an intra-familial purchase, where one relative sells to another relative and we want to gift some equity for the down payment, or whether that's, a multi-generational family purchase where you have several people who are going to live in the home together and we don't know quite how to structure, the applicants and the income and those things. Whether it's the person who says, I'm self-employed and I went to my bank or another lending institution and they told me no. And I'll say, please show me your tax returns. Let's figure out how we can make this happen. I think about somebody who I helped a year or so ago who ran a courier service. And the bank looked at her bottom line, but they didn't look at the fact that you can add back in depreciation. And she wrote off a lot of depreciation on her vehicle because she ran a courier service. So when you add back in that information, all of a sudden I could qualify her for the home that she wanted. And she came on her closing day after her closing, she came to me with champagne and flowers.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Yes. And she calls me every year on the anniversary of her closing.
Oh, that's lovely, too.
Give me the update and to say thank you
No,
again.
that's very
And so
lovely.
those are the folks who really, really
Right.
make my job worth doing, you
Right.
know?
I might add to another word. You mentioned fierce advocate. I would also add loyal
Yes.
to that mix.
Yes.
The next time you're asked that question.
Loyal to a fault sometimes, yes.
Well-
like I'll stick with things that other people would say, well, maybe now's the time to say no. And I'll say, no, no,
Right.
no. This is where we have to really persevere.
Yep.
Persevere.
Yeah, I would add loyal.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's see. What is, getting back to COVID, what is one of the biggest insights that you got, whether it's business or personal, after that experience?
I think that for me, for COVID, the takeaway was really about the things that are most important to you. You know, the things that you value most.
Did you get any insight as to what those were?
Yeah, well, I mean, you prioritize, you know, when you feel like you can't go out into the world and it's not safe to do. What is important to you? And for me, it's my children, it's my home, it's my closest friends, it's my immediate family, and to keep my people safe and well and tight and connected. You know, and, you know, the idea of not being able to see people that I see sort of in more casual settings was tough and still is tough. And I'm still so grateful for the time that we have to get back together again. But I think COVID kind of changed my focus and made it sort of less outbound and a little bit more in.
I can sense that from you, actually.
Yeah,
It's very nice.
yeah.
Let's see. What's up? What's next for you? What's up? What's in the chute for you next?
What's in the chute for me is to keep growing the business. You know, I mean, I love what I do. I think that comes out, you know, in the work that I do and the conversation that we have along the lines of the work. You know, to keep building the network, keep serving people well, keep serving my community well, and to really keep having fun with my kids. You know, I mean,
Now they're getting older, too, and more fun.
Yeah, and just in different ways, you know, and to just keep evolving. This week, my son is actually taller than I am.
All right. I just can't even comprehend that.
I know. I mean, I knew this day was coming. I just didn't know it would be this soon. You know, he's a 7th grader. But yes, he has eclipsed me in height at this point, so that's crazy. You know, and, you know, my daughter is learning to swim, and, you know, she is...
The little one.
Yes. Well, she was the little one, you know, and now she's not. She's a kindergartner, and she is a big personality. She is a big personality.
Good.
Yeah, but you know we're trying to have as much fun as we can, and you know all in in different ways. You know whether that means spending times. We have a dear friend who has horses, and so whether that means going off and riding horses with our dear friend, or whether that means visiting with folks near and far, relatives, etc. Whether that means sort of taking off and experiencing travel.
Right.
My kids are great travelers at this point because that's been very much part of their lives.
Yeah.
Having friends and hosting friends at our house, it's kind of our small little world.
Right.
And sometimes we take it on the go. One of the great things that we did this summer, which we've done a couple summers in a row, is renting a house at the Cape for a week, a big house where we can fit the extended family.
Oh, nice.
And having everybody get together.
Yes.
And just,
But those are the things that you remember when you're a kid, when your cousins are running around and you're running amok and, doing things that your parents may not know that you're up to.
Exactly. All that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Which you can later surprise your parents with as an
Yes.
adult around the dinner
Right.
table and say, oh, right, remember that time that we told you that my little sister tripped and fell and broke
Right.
her teeth with
Right.
roller skating? That wasn't how that happened.
Yeah, right.
And then to your parents' horror, they are,
Yeah.
Grateful that you lived, through
Right.
some of those experiences. But for this
To go to college.
this Cape House, one of the beautiful things was watching the little kids, also with their older brothers. They have 2 older brothers who
Oh,
are
that's
my
right.
stepsons.
That's right.
And so, those kids came too. And so
Oh, wow.
we've got kids who are 27, 24,
Right.
13, and 5.
Hey, boy.
Yeah. but they're playing together and they're splashing in the pool and we're eating ice cream and
Yeah.
we're grilling on the grill, and there is nothing.
All is well.
Yeah, nothing that makes my heart feel more full than that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So, Kate, where can people find you?
You can find
You can help solve some of these
Yes.
problems that they may have.
Yes. Well, you can find me at 251 Northampton Street in Easthampton.
Yeah.
So right on Route 10. I often joke that my front door is in Easthampton and the back exit is in Northampton because we literally sit on the
Right.
town line.
Right.
Easiest way to reach me, though, is to call me or text me.
Yep.
My phone number, 413-387-9999.
Wow.
Hey, it's publicized.
There
so
you go,
may as
out in the
well.
world.
Yep, out in the world. You can also, if you Google Kate Reagan mortgage, I'll pop up. If you
Okay.
Google Kate Reagan Guild Mortgage, I'll pop up.
Okay.
So how can you find me? Yeah, call me. Text
Excellent.
me. Say, hey, can we schedule a time to talk? I want to talk about mortgage financing, or I want to talk about big community involvement, or whatever it might
Nice.
be. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time
It's
and
my
sitting with
pleasure.
me and chatting and helping us know you a little bit more.
My pleasure.
A little deeper, what you do,
Yes.
where you do it, why you do it.
Well, thank you, Mo, for having me. This has been really enjoyable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always a
It's one
delight.
of our usual conversations, just with, bright lights and microphones
I know.
instead of lunches.
I know, and a big logo.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
The only thing, next time we'll have lunch shipped in.
Sounds like a plan.
And that's going to be it for us today. I want to thank you all for joining us. I also want to thank, once again, eMedia. If you would like to know more about eMedia or become a member, you can do that at easthamptonmedia.org. If you'd like to know more about the Chamber, you can do the same. You can look us up at easthamptonchamber.org. I forgot for a moment who I was. And you can listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube, Easthampton Media's YouTube channel, or the Easthampton Chamber's YouTube channel. Make sure that you smash the like button, share, subscribe, share with your friends. And until we see you the next time, peace out, babies.